Hello and welcome back to the Animal Room at the Science Center here in Ithaca, New York. My name is Colin. I'm the curator of live exhibits and I'm excited to take you on another tour of our animal room. Right now we're looking into our green tree python exhibit. You can see our two snakes perched together up on the left-hand corner of your screen. We have the camera here because yesterday was an exciting day for these snakes. Or at least it was an exciting day for me because of these snakes. Our green tree pythons bred all through the winter fairly regularly. Our female had produced eggs last year, and so because of that I didn't know if she would produce eggs this year. Oftentimes, green tree pythons do not produce eggs in sequential years. They take a year or more off. In the wild, they likely take many years off because producing such large clutches of eggs as these snakes do takes a huge amount of energy out of the females, and it takes them quite some time to recover from that. In captivity, where we can feed them as we see fit, we're able to get the females to bounce back sooner. But generally, snakes don't breed every year. So we didn't know if we'd get eggs this year, but lo and behold, she clearly ovulated. So we saw her one day, it looked like she'd swallowed a small football. When these snakes ovulate, their ova have to pass by one another as they descend into her oviduct. And when that happens, it makes them swell up and get humongous. So if you're able to catch that, it lasts for anywhere from 12 to maybe 48 hours, that swelling, and if you see it, then you can be assured that your snake is ovulated. No guarantee you'll get good eggs at that point, but at least you know that she has eggs in her oviduct becoming shelled and will lay them eventually. So we knew we would get something, and of course, it had to come on a day that I wasn't working. I got a call from my keeper yesterday morning, super excitement that she had laid her eggs. So as soon as I could, I came rushing in and we found her sitting on a batch of eggs. We pulled her off and got the eggs set up in the incubator. We made a video of that, so I'm not sure if it's available yet, but sometime in the very near future, the video of us pulling the lay box out and pulling her off of the eggs will be available on our YouTube channel. Please check that out when you get the chance. We candled all the eggs, and I believe we got some pretty good footage of the eggs being candled where you can clearly see the embryos and the vein growth. She laid 15 eggs total. 6 of those were what we call slugs. They were improperly developed, or more likely they're unfertilized ova, but for some reason all of them didn't get fertilized. So she had 6, and you can recognize a snake slug, by the fact that they're, rather than being a bright shiny white, well, maybe not shiny, being a bright white, they're usually an off-white or a tan or darker color. And they're, rather than being dry, they usually feel kind of slimy. They're typically smaller. Usually it's pretty easy to recognize a slug immediately. We went ahead and candled all of them though. We have 9 eggs that have beautiful embryos and great vein development, though unfortunately 3 of those 9 are half-size eggs. So very likely baby snakes will develop in those eggs, but when they hatch they will be little tiny snakes. Green tree python babies are very difficult to get started feeding. Most likely in the wild they're eating, we don't know what, probably baby lizards or insects, something besides newborn baby mice. So it takes a long time to convince the little babies that they want to eat little baby mice rather than little baby lizards or insects or whatever they're eating in the wild. So when they are born even smaller, that difficult conversation can potentially become insurmountable. I've had decent luck in my life of incubating and hatching eggs, so I have great hopes that these eggs will make it through incubation and will hatch them out. I've struggled a lot more with getting babies started. Fortunately, I have some good friends that have great skill at that, and so perhaps we'll be soliciting some help with these babies depending on how many we get. I'm really excited that it's happened. Really excited that we'll get to hopefully have some little baby snakes to show off. Their incubation time frame is generally about 49 to 52 days. With these guys, there certainly can be variability. It's usually temperature dependent, but it's usually a small window in which they come. So let's see, I'm trying to pull up my calendar here. I think I put a note in it. There we go. July 15th will be the start of our hatch window. So I would be shocked if any of them hatch before July 15th. It could be as much as a week after that, but hopefully that mid-July time period, though, we'll have at least a few of those eggs hatching. Hopefully we'll be open again by that point. Maybe we'll even find a way to be able to exhibit those eggs incubating and let our guests see them incubating and possibly even pipping through their egg with their little egg tooth on the front of their mouths, making the cuts in it and sticking their little heads out, taking their first breaths of air. It's certainly exciting. It's been a long time since I've had baby green tree pythons to play with and enjoy. A fun thing about pythons, and something that you'll be able to see in the video we made yesterday, is that green tree pythons, like virtually all pythons, there are some exceptions to this rule, but the vast majority of pythons, female pythons, will maternally incubate their eggs. So most snakes look for warm ground to lay their eggs in, whether it's warmed by sunshine or whether it's warmed by decomposting plant material. Most snakes will typically lay their eggs in a warm spot like that, and then as soon as they're done laying, they slither off, never to look back again. Pythons, however, will lay their eggs excuse me, in a large clump, and then they coil around the clump. Actually, they're probably coiled around already, and then they lay their eggs into the center of their clump. But they gather up all the eggs either way into their coils, and will stay what we call beehive coil. They'll coil quite perfectly around the eggs and maternally incubate them. They have heat-sensing pits. I'll start opening this cage up and show you some of these things, or at least show you the heat-sensing pits. They have heat-sensing pits on their face that give them a thermal image, and it has been documented many times that female green tree pythons while they're maternally incubating their eggs, they will periodically peer down into their coils and look at the eggs. And it's believed that when they're doing that, they're using their heat-sensing pits to detect the temperature of the eggs. And they know exactly what temperature they want them. And if they're too hot, trying to get the camera in here, sorry about that. If they're too hot, they will loosen their coils. Oh, sorry there. I'm going to do a little technology management. They'll loosen their coils and let some of that excess heat escape and keep the eggs at the right temperature. If they're too cold, even though they're exothermic and they get their temperature from their surroundings, the females will actually do some muscle contractions. It looks a little bit like shivering, acts the same as shivering, and those muscle contractions do generate a little bit of warmth. And they can raise the temperature of their eggs by a couple degrees even, to keep them just at the right temperature. I'm trying to get down low here. There we go. That's a beautiful view of her heat-sensing pits. So just under her nostrils there, you can see some sort of slits between the scales. And And those are heat sensing pits. She has them on her upper lip. They're along the front there. And then down on her lower jaw, she has heat sensing pits at the back of her mouth. And they all sort of point in a slightly different direction around her front of her head. So she has a pretty broad view of the heat signature of things around her. And they primarily use this to detect prey, so they can see warm prey running by in complete darkness. But again, it's strongly believed that they use those heat sensing pits also to monitor their egg temperature. So they're quite good mothers. At least they're good mothers when it comes to caring for their eggs. Once their babies hatch, the babies will slither off, never to look back again. So they don't offer any care to their offspring once they're hatched, but they do care for their developing eggs. Yesterday, when we took her off of her eggs, we had her lay box was over in this corner of the exhibit over here. And when we took her out off of her eggs, took the lay box out and took her off of them, I put her back in on this perch up here, and she immediately started looking back over in this corner. She knew where she'd laid those eggs and she wanted to get back to them. It's a strong urge in her to want to maternally incubate those eggs and keep them warm. There have been cases, I've heard of snakes when they get too cold, when they're maternally incubating and they're getting too cold and they're not able to keep the temperature up by their muscle contractions alone, they'll actually leave their eggs, go bask in the sunshine to get nice and warm, and then come back to the eggs and warm the eggs that way. So they have very strong instinct to incubate those eggs, and they generally do a good job at it. I wish we could have left her on them. Unfortunately, there were a number of slugs. We tried to let her maternally incubate last year's batch, and I don't know if there was a slug in there if one egg went bad. But when they're maternally incubating, it's much more difficult to monitor the eggs. And she'll keep the whole clutch together, even if some eggs are going bad. And unfortunately, when one egg goes bad, it can begin to spoil the other eggs. And that's what happened last year, so we weren't able to hatch any green trees out last year. But she's given us another chance. So we've got our fingers crossed, and hoping it will happen. It is an exciting time. Another fun thing about green trees is they go through what's called an ontogenetic color change. So the babies start off as bright red or yellow offspring, and then it's anywhere from 1 to even 3 years old that they then go through this color change where they lose their juvenile colors and adapt their adult coloration. When one first looks at a red or a yellow baby, it can be confusing why they would be that color. It seems almost like it's like an aposematic coloration to warn predators to not eat something that brightly colored. However, the little babies often have no great protection besides their teeth, and their teeth are kind of tiny and don't do a lot of good to try to scare off predators. So it's certainly not an aposematic coloration. The belief behind it of why they are those colors is that the adults, at least during the daytime, spend much of their time up in the treetops amongst the green leaves, and so therefore need to be this bright green color to camouflage in there. But younger animals, it's believed, spend much more time down on near the forest floor, maybe just a few feet off the ground at most. And down in the forest floor, when light trickles through the treetops and through all the leaves, so it's much darker, and the wavelengths of light that reach the bottom are different. And so it seems that it behooves a baby snake to be that red or yellow color to mimic the speckling of light shining through the forest canopy. So that's the idea behind why they would have such brightly colored babies. I can't wait. In less than 2 months, hopefully we'll be looking at little babies and talking about that again. So there's our green tree pythons. Ah, our Tokay Gecko didn't run off when I opened this cage. I might get this camera back close to him and see how good of a look we can get at our Tokay Gecko. Let's do a little more management here. He's looking kind of dusky right now. He must be opaque, getting ready to shed. because generally he's a bright creature. Really pretty colors on this animal. This animal was donated to us by a friend of mine who's a gecko breeder. He lives down in Maryland and works with a number of different species of geckos, including tokays. He had a surplus of these guys, so he offered them to us. There he is. I accepted them, believing they would be food for our green tree pythons. They were just little tiny lizards at the time, little juveniles. But they did quite well and grew up quite large. We lost the females. They were laying a bunch of eggs before we lost them. Probably put way too much calcium into their eggs. Speaking of their eggs, here, there are a few of the eggs left over. We did not have a great success in hatching the babies. The temperatures, I believe, in this cage fluctuated too much. It didn't hold constant enough for the babies to hatch. There are eggs that are broken there. The adults will sometimes break into eggs that aren't their own to eat the yolk and the calcium. Calcium can be a limiting nutrient for females when they're laying eggs. It takes a lot to create little embryos and the shelled eggs to put around them. So there's our Tokay Gecko. Another fun thing about these eggs is you can see they're stuck up in the corner there. When they lay the eggs, they're soft and tacky, but after they harden, they become hard like a chicken egg. And many geckos use this technique. They lay their eggs on the undersides of rocks or leaves or in hidden spots, and they become glued there. I would need a chisel in order to get all of that shell off of that wood there. It is solidly glued in place. There's the Tokay's tail. So again, he's quite dusky today. Typically is much brighter. I'm guessing he's going to shed soon. Can't really see his eye, and if I get much closer, Tokays are not the friendliest geckos. I would not like to get bit by a Tokay this size. That would definitely not feel good. So that's our green tree exhibit. Fun times in here. It appears as though I have messed up our connection. My computer is telling me that I have lost you all. I'll stick you here, let you look at our chameleon exhibit. I'd say look at our chameleon, but he's so well hidden I doubt you could find him there. I see him, but it's a little easier when I'm here. In case anybody is still with me. There he is, right there. You can see the white stripe. That's his head out front there. He's looking in this direction. There's our chameleon hiding right there. I'm going to take a moment now, see if I can figure out this internet connection. See if I can get you all back. Give me 1 second. There. I think I have you all back. Don't know how long you may have been gone for. I was rambling on and on about our green tree python. But we're back. Looking at our carpet chameleon. While I'm locking up the green tree cage. Don't need to lose anybody there. Here. Since we're looking here, let me give you a closer look at this chameleon. There he is. He still is angry at me for thinning out his cage. He's dark drab colors. He generally was bright greens and pastel colors living in his cage here, but it had become an overgrown jungle and people were complaining that they couldn't see this guy. So I came in and thinned it all out. Happened either just before or just after we shut down. And he has not forgiven me ever since then. He's been dark and drab and angry. He's lost all of his cover. Feels too exposed now. But the plants are growing back in now. Becoming a bit thicker again. We have this nice Picus Vine here, this variegated variety that's, now that it's thinned and has gotten more light, it's been growing significantly. I took out a couple of the palms that had overgrown the cage, but we still have a couple left. And they're growing up. You can see a new palm frond there, just shooting out. But since I've thinned the cage, this Schefflera here, this palmate leafed plant, this Schefflera has become his favorite hangout spot. That's usually where we can find him, over on the left side here. He does like to hang out up here. You might be able to see there's a few bits of shed skin he left behind. Different animals, different reptiles have different ways of shedding their skin. Chameleons are always funny. To me, it always looks as if they've exploded with their shed. You can see they become drab as they get ready to shed. And then once it's time for the skin to come off, many animals, it comes off in one little piece at a time. Many lizards. Snakes, of course, shed all in one fell swoop. And chameleons look like they've exploded. Their skin just suddenly is popping and peeling and cracking all over the place. I find it fairly comical. We've come over to our Rhino Rat Snakes. There's our female hanging out in the water. She's still in shed. She's cleared up and she should shed soon, and that should be her prelay shed as well. So we'll expect to get eggs out of her fairly soon, which is why we have this lay box in here. A little lay potato. The male is over here, you can see his tail. And then his body stretches over into the foliage here. I don't know if you can see it. He's stretching through there, and his head is surely over on this side somewhere. Oh, there it is. Hiding right back there. The Rhino Rat Snakes are another snake completely unrelated to green tree pythons. Pythons are part of the Boidae family. Rhino Rat Snakes are colubrids. Jeez, almost blanked on that. Colubrids being the largest family of snakes. Completely unrelated, and yet they both are green snakes, and they both have offspring that go through an ontogenetic color change. It's really an interesting thing. There's also the emerald tree boa, which is another boid, but it's a boa, so it's very distantly related to the green tree python, and yet as an adult snake, it's a bright green color and lives in the treetops, and just like the green tree pythons, they have red babies when they're born, who go through an ontogenetic color change as they reach adulthood and go up into the treetops. So it seems like that is a pretty successful strategy. There must have been strong selective pressures for so many different green snakes, green arboreal tree-dwelling snakes, to have babies born a different color and to turn green with time. Well, why don't we roll over here while we're looking at snakes? I have to do a little more cord management, as always. There we go. We'll come and look at Percy. There we go. Percy is a corn snake. She is not green, and she did not go through an ontogenetic color change. But we love her just the same. Percy is very arguably the nicest snake in the entire world. Of course, now that I said that, she's going to come over here and chomp me. No, she wants to give you all a kiss. Oh, how sweet, Percy. Do you miss all of your friends? Percy has lived at the Science Center for her entire life. And she just can't wait to get to see you all again. Percy has probably met more of our guests than any other animal in our collection. She hatched here in 2006. Her birthday is in late May, about now actually. I think we just missed it. I think it was maybe a week or so ago. So she is 14 years old now. She has lived her whole life here and has met probably thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of our guests over the years. She is a fabulous snake. She is gorgeous. And she is super friendly. And she too just laid eggs. Though unfortunately, she's never been around a male snake, so all of her eggs were slugs. None of them were fertilized. It is possible that a snake can exhibit parthenogenesis. It has been recorded before. I'm pretty sure there's a known case of a Drymarchon, a indigo snake, that went through parthenogenesis and produced viable eggs that hatched and were complete genetic clones of their mother. So it can happen, but hasn't happened with Percy. We won't cross our fingers. Or we can cross our fingers, but we shouldn't have high hopes. Corn snakes are found in the southern United States. I believe they make it as far north as Pennsylvania, but they do not make it into New York. They are not a native species here in New York. We do have milk snakes here that look very much like a corn snake, have a very similar pattern, but generally different colors. Corn snakes are typically these bright orange colors. Milk snakes, as I've seen them, are typically browns and grays, but they have these same sorts of saddles along their backs. The milk snake is one of the larger snakes you'd find in this area. Down here in the Ithaca Flats, we also have black rat snakes. Though up in the hills where I live, up in Caroline, the winters are too cold up there for black rat snakes to survive. Black rat snakes and maybe the northern water snakes are our biggest snakes in this area. Most of the snakes we have are small ones, milk snakes, and we've got the red bellies and decays and the green grass snakes. There are quite a few really neat snakes, but most of them are on the small side. And none of the snakes in the immediate Ithaca area are dangerous. Nothing to worry about here. Not too far away, down in the Elmira Flats area, you can find timber rattlesnakes. And there's also populations of Massasaugas in New York, but they're very hard to come by, very rare. And New York actually has the northernmost population of timber rattlesnakes, but that's east of the Hudson River on the border with Vermont, I believe. So that's Percy. She's a fun one. I know many people ask me if snakes like to be handled. My answer has to always be, I don't know. I've never had a snake tell me they like it or didn't like it. Certainly there can show some signs that might make me think one direction or the other. Try to handle a snake and it bites you every time. Probably safe to say that snake doesn't like to be handled. But just because a snake doesn't bite you, I wouldn't say is a reason to say that it likes to be handled. However, I believe in my heart that Percy likes to be handled. She's spent so much time being handled by our volunteers and our staff and getting to meet kids that I'm sure she's gone beyond being used to it, and I'm certain that she probably enjoys it. Well, we have reached the end of our half an hour. I've only showed you a drop in the bucket of our animal room, but I unfortunately have work to do. Getting ready to do a water change here for our reef tank. Need to keep our corals happy and healthy. So I'm going to wheel you all over here, and we're going to set you up looking at our beaded lizard. Our beaded lizard is, as far as I know, the only venomous animal on exhibit in Tompkins County. Oh, cord is stuck. There we go. So I'll swing you around here. Rather convenient that this lizard spends the vast majority of its time hiding under that rock there. So pretty safe to say that if I set you up right here, you'll probably get to spend a decent amount of time looking at our beaded lizard. Well, thanks for joining me. It's always a pleasure to get to show off our collection. We've got such great animals here, such a great opportunity to learn about animals' adaptations and habitats, conservation issues. Come back again Tuesday at 2 o'clock and we'll do another tour. Take care and stay healthy.